This recipe is for Dauphinoise potatoes, which looks better if you can serve it in a ring for your exam. This ring, what you need to do, if you have one, is to grease the ring thoroughly on the inside with a bit of melted butter and then grease a little bit of foil. The Dauphinoise potato recipe has 100 mils of cream in, and we don't want the cream to be all over the base of the oven. So if you grease a bit of foil, you can scrunch it up the outside of your ring to help give you a base, so that when you filled your ring with the potatoes and cream mixture, hopefully the cream will stay inside the ring and you will be able to turn the ring out. If you don't have a ring like that, you can sometimes use a pastry cutter. They're a bit flatter, they're not quite as tall, which means you won't get quite as much potato in, or you can use a smaller dish. This dish is quite large for one portion, but it's the only size dish that I have at home. So I'm just going to thoroughly grease that, and I will put some of the Dauphinoise in the ring and some into the dish. You need 40 grams of cheese, and for your mise en place, which means getting yourself ready, you need to have all of these things done before you start to cook. So you need to grease your rings, turn your oven on to 160 degrees if it's a fan oven or gas mark 4. Your cheese needs to be grated, and it's just 40 grams of cheese that you need for this. It's not meant to be lots of cheese in this recipe, just enough to give a little bit of flavour and a bit of colour on the top of your potatoes when they're cooking. Help give it a nice golden brown colour. So grated cheese onto a plate or your chopping board. You need an onion and some garlic, so 1 clove of garlic, which you need to peel and then chop. And if you can chop this reasonably small, it's actually better, so you don't have huge lumps of garlic in your food. You can get it as fine as you can. If you've got a garlic crusher, you could crush it, remembering to use bridge hold when you are cutting, so that you go between your fingers and you are not going to be cutting your fingers, and then turn around and cut the other way as well. So as small as you can chop your garlic would be good, because remember, in your exam your food should be tasted by the person marking, and large lumps of raw garlic are not going to be particularly good in your potato. So just leave your garlic. I'm just going to put the garlic on the same plate as the cheese so that it is out of the way. While I do the onion, you only need half an onion, and I'm using a red onion, but you can use a white onion. Peel your onion, and if you leave one or other of the ends on, it makes it much easier to chop or slice. In this case, we want really fine slices of onion. Again, half moons, absolutely fine, but we want to keep this fine so that we can make sure that when this dish is cooked again, you are not going to have raw onion in your dish. So I've sliced most of that. I'm now going to swap to bridge hold again to try and slice the rest of it. You don't have to use it if it's all the onion, if it's a large onion, and I'm just going to put the end over there. These onion pieces just need to be broken up a bit, because you don't want a whole slice of onion in your dish, but you should have some nice thinly sliced pieces of onion ready to go. The last thing you're going to need is your potatoes, and it's 350 grams of potatoes. It doesn't have to be large potatoes, and for this recipe in some ways it's better if you've got small potatoes because they allow you to put a nice pattern and a good decoration on the top of your dish. Again, remembering for your exam, you've got to present just one portion. If you keep the smaller slices of potatoes to put on the top of the dish when it's cooked, or before it's cooked, you're going to have a better presentation. Please note that all the peelings are going straight onto a plate. It can be a plate, a bowl, a piece of paper towel, but you need to make sure for your exam that you are keeping the rubbish separate from the food you are going to use. So I have my cheese grated, my onion sliced, my garlic chopped, I have my potatoes peeled, I have the cream measured, and I have a little bit of salt in a bowl. I've also got the oven on and the dishes ready to go, which means the mise en place is finished and I can actually start assembling this dish. Everything else is being sliced apart from the potatoes. I didn't want to slice the potatoes until everything else was done because they can go brown. And same as you did for the onion, you need to try and slice these as thinly as possible. These go into the oven raw, and raw potato takes quite a long time to cook. That slice was a bit thick, but raw potato will take a long time to cook. So the thinner you can slice these, the better. And I like to go across the potato and get rounds of potato because I think that looks nicer in the dish. And again, when you start to reach the end, you need to make sure that you are using bridge hold so that you are slicing down between your fingers. So that potato slice, there are some quite large bits of potato in there compared to the size of the dishes, so I will try and make sure that I use those up. These two are slightly smaller, and I can use some of the slices from this. I'm going to put to one side for the top to make sure that I can arrange those attractively. It is easier with the smaller slices of potato to get an attractive looking top layer. So all your potatoes need to be thinly sliced for this recipe, and the last one here, and then I can start to assemble this dish. Although I'm using double cream in this recipe, if you wanted to make it slightly healthier, you could use single cream. You could perhaps mix the double cream with a little bit of milk if you wanted to improve the nutritional value or cut down on the fat. So the way you assemble your dish, choose your potato slices, and to start off with, just make sure that you have a complete layer of potato in the bottom of your dish. So this one I'm going to use slightly smaller slices of potato because it's a smaller dish, and I just need to make sure, again, that I have a complete layer of potato in the bottom of the dish. After the potato, you can add a few bits of onion. Try and make sure that you're not piling this all up in the middle, that you are getting the extra bits of flavourings, the onion, the garlic, the cheese, towards the outside of the dish. Otherwise, when it's done, you are going to find that you have almost a mountain of potatoes coming up to a peak in the middle of your dish, which is not what you need. A little bit of cheese between each layer, as well. I've got some salt here. So because it's potatoes, I just want to add a tiny little bit of salt, not loads, but I do think potatoes need a little bit of salt when they're cooking, and I also like a bit of black pepper. So I'm just going to put a little bit of black pepper between the layers. Having done one layer, you need to repeat that to make sure that you've used all your potato up. So just keep layering up your potato until you've used all of your ingredients. I'm using the end bits from the potato where the slices are very small for the bottom and the large ones from the middle. I want to try and keep all the bits that are roughly the same size for the top so that I can have a good looking bit of decoration for the top. So a good layer of potato, and feel free to press this down to make sure that it is going to fill the dish. And again, you repeat these layers until you've used all of your ingredients up. When you think you've nearly used all of your ingredients, make sure that you've got nothing left. So there's not really going to be enough for 2 more layers here, or another layer in 2 dishes. So I'm going to make this my final layer. I'm going to use as much of this potato as I can on this layer, because this is going to be the final one before I then put my potato on the top. So I am going to try and use as much of this as I can without putting too much in. So onion, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to have a little bit of onion left. The rest of the garlic is going to go in. I'm going to put a little bit more cheese and leave myself a little bit of cheese for the top. So the final layer of potato, this is the one that I'm going to serve as if it would be in an exam. So I'm going to take the small layers of potato, and starting around the outside of the dish, I'm just going to put them in so that they overlap and sit neatly on the top. Those ones are a little bit big, they'd be better off in the other dish. So I'm just going to overlap my potatoes. I'm going to have a gap in the middle, so I'm just going to put one underneath and then have all my overlapped potatoes around the edge of this dish. This can be a little bit fiddly, but it is worth trying to take a bit of time on this and sort it out so that you have an attractive finish when the potato goes in the oven. You can press that down, but on the top of the potato dish, what you're aiming for is a sort of swirl of potatoes that looks neat and will look attractive. And I'm just going to use the rest of these potatoes on this dish, and I'm just about going to have enough to top these dishes off. There we go, one more bit there. And again, I'm just going to press that down a little bit to help keep all the ingredients in the dish. The last thing that you need to do is to slowly pour some cream on the top. So you slowly pour your cream in until you've used all of your cream, and if you have a little bit of cheese left, you can put that on the top as well. And it doesn't really matter if the cheese goes on before or after the cream. The cheese will just help to brown these potato dishes off in the oven and give them an attractive appearance. So I have the cream there, I've got the cheese, I'm just going to pour all of this in, and then these go into the oven. You need to use a little bit of patience with these to actually give the cream a chance to work down the potatoes. They should take between an hour and an hour and a half to cook, so it's the sort of thing that you can do reasonably early before you actually get involved with something else. They can sit in your oven, they're going to take an hour and a half to cook, possibly, depending on the size of your dish, and you can be getting on with something else at the same time. So everything needs to go in. I'm just going to finish adding the cream and I'll pop these into the oven. Okay, the Dauphinoise potatoes are cooked. They've been in the oven for an hour and they're golden brown on the top. I've left them to rest for a little bit, and the small ones are done as well. So you can serve them in the dish. This dish would just need a little bit of wiping here where the cream has bubbled up the edge, or you can serve them as part of your meal. If you give them a few minutes to just rest, it does make them easier to turn out. So I'm just going to make sure that this potato in the ring is loose all the way around, and then I am going to turn it onto a slate. If I was serving this with a meal, I would probably serve it with something like a ballotine of chicken, where I could have the chicken at one end and the potato at the other end of the dish. And I've chosen a black slate to put this on because the potato is going to be quite creamy in colour, and as you can see, it's loose in the ring where it was greased, and you end up with a little pile of potatoes that you can serve. You can see the layers and the cream around the outside of that, and possibly, depending on what you're serving it with, just a little bit of parsley on the top. And then whatever meat you are going to serve could go here, or you could have your potatoes and vegetables together.